there have been longitudinal studies done now in the border of the state for a number of years, as in other parts of the country. But in particular, in the border of the state in Starr County, what they found out that in doing genetics tests is that there's a variance on one of the genes. That is, there's something different in the genetic admixture when you look at a lot of individuals that have Mexican-American ancestry or other Hispanic type or Latin origin. And when you see that, it kind of, or it tends to explain the variance associated with severity, and it tends to explain the prevalence to some degree. And there's still a lot to understand about it, because the irony is that you can have the gene and have diabetes, not have the gene and have diabetes. Maybe in the last 5-6 years, they found the location of the problem. But what we do know is that knowing the location helps us as far as the basic science is concerned. But for those of us who work in the clinical aspect, we have to understand more what's happening at the cellular level as well, because then we can design either behavioral or pharmacologic or other basic science interventions. Because, as I mentioned, type 1 is in essence short and sweet as far as its understanding. You're not producing insulin. So we've tried to inhale, insulin, and the molecule is so large, it doesn't have too many promises as far as it work in the long term, because it affects the lung. Having this large molecule, you have to have good lung function. So you got a pump, and we've got very good pumps now that work, and we've got implantable pumps, and we've got individuals that can even have pancreas transplantation. But the pancreas is a very interesting organ that lies under the stomach, and it's a small organ which only about a couple percent of that entire organ produces endocrine function, like to produce insulin, for example. But the pancreas also produces another hormone that acts opposite of insulin. It's called glucagon. This is sort of the culprit that we have in diabetes. If we could suppress glucagon, then we probably could have a handle on a lot of things. Because diabetes, in short, you could say it's a high...
You mean with pills?
Yeah. And so remember that the body is starving, or the cells are starving, because even though there's a lot of sugar out the cells, it can't be used. So the pancreas tells these cells to produce glucagon. And then the glucagon tells the liver to break down the sugars that's stored there. So you have more hyperglycemia. Whether it's type 1 diabetes, type 2 diabetes, any type of stress response, it causes that. And then you end up using, if that doesn't work, then you end up taking, like I mentioned before, the protein and converting it to sugar, or glucose, which is sugar, and then you end up having more hyperglycemia. And if you get into the fat, then it causes acidosis. And the problem we see is that whenever, diabetes is out of control, and oftentimes it's noted to be out of control by a number called capital A, little 1, or subscript 1, C, A1C. This A1C sort of reflects what the blood glucose is the past 3 months. A lot of people with diabetes need to know this number. So it's a percentile score. It's an average of all the blood sugars before you eat and after you eat for the past 3 months. The reason that number is used at A1C is because just a certain percentage of this glucose is supposed to bind around hemoglobin, and red blood cells turn over every 3 months. So that's why it's only a reflection of the past 3 months, because hemoglobin is carried within the red blood cell. So when we look at an A1C on a person, we're thinking we would like it as close as possible to 6%, 7%. If you don't have diabetes, oftentimes your A1C is between 4 and 6%. However, someone who's pregnant, we want it to be as close to 4 and 6%, hopefully 5%, because anything above 6, 6.5, getting close to 7, is an average blood glucose 150, 170. That's way too high, because we know there's already changes that occur on the tissues of the body with average blood glucose of 150. So A1C, therefore, should be around 6%, around 7%, no more, but it depends on the individual. There are a lot of programs here in Houston, not too many, of course, for Spanish-speaking patients, but there's the American Diabetes Association, the Texas Diabetes Council. These are organizations that you can Google, you can search, you can call to get information that you might need. With our program, we're in the Denver Harbor community. We're in the 2nd Ward. We're in some aspects of the 3rd Ward. And we do research and educational programs to not only manage diabetes, but to prevent diabetes. And we're out of the Research Institute or the Center for Diabetes Research at the Methodist Hospital. And it's also part of Cornell University. So we look at the basic science of inflammation of diabetes. We're trying to prevent it in young women and their children. And we're also dealing with very, very complicated complicated diabetes in individuals here in the community. But we have the tools to do it now. We know how to detect very small amount of protein in the urine before you have kidney failure. We can see changes in the eye a lot faster than we could and take care of them so people don't go blind anymore. So you can, you have to have a stress test if you're over 30, 35, especially if you've already had heart disease in your family. You've got to, check your feet daily. Check your eyes annually with a fundoscopic dilated examination. And you've got to continue to check your blood glucose various times a day, because an average blood glucose doesn't tell us very much. We need to know the patterns and the trends of your blood glucose, so that there's a lot of good insulins nowadays that are identical to human insulin. Not as before, we had a lot of problems with human insulin. With other insulins that were not human, I should say. They can call at 832-389-8457. That's 832-389-8457. And they could text information, or they could call me, and I could give them more information about how to contact me. Also, it's E.T. Villagomez at tmhs.org. But again, Evangelina Villagomez, and you could Google me and probably can find me easy that way too, and I can help them.